Yeah, I'll react to that, sure. Hey guys, let's learn. Geography Geek, original link to the video top of the description. How the Netherlands helped America gain independence and how it cost them. Interesting. Preemptive like. Let's go. Let's learn.
This isn't a history channel, but as English explorer Captain John Smith once wrote, geography without history seemeth a carcass without motion. But before I get into the story I'm about to tell, if you are new to the channel, welcome. On this channel, I talk about a variety of geography-related topics on whatever I'm interested in at the moment. I have quite a few history videos planned for this summer, such as what's left of the Dutch in New York City, a lot of old map videos, and a few on America's attempts at exterminating their wildlife.
Yeah, Jesus Christ. It took me a second to realize what these were. Right, those are all bison skulls. Just skulls, not even the whole carcass. What was I going to say? That was a jarring image. Right, the only thing that I remember learning about growing up when it comes to the Dutch and American history is that New York City used to be called New Amsterdam. Other than that, I really don't know about Dutch influence in the USA, but I'm sure it is a lot more than I currently know, obviously, as the video suggests. I'm going to stop talking.
So if these are topics that interest you as well, hit the subscribe button, and hit the bell if you want to get notifications on new uploads. Now let's go ahead and get started. If you know more than a little about the American Revolution, you know that France played an important role in America's victory for independence by providing money, men, and material. But there is another lesser-known contributor to the United States victory, the Netherlands. Its official name at the time was the Republic of the Seven United Netherlands.
Is it fair to say, or is it stretching it, that the American Revolution for the French was sort of a proxy war? You know? Or is that oversimplifying it?
Netherlands. Its official name at the time was the Republic of the Seven United Netherlands, also commonly known as the Dutch Republic. This is the predecessor state of modern-day Netherlands, though at the time this also included parts of modern-day Belgium. Now, the Netherlands wasn't officially an ally of the United States, nor did they support the United States with soldiers, both of which probably contributes to why they are often forgotten. Great Britain actually saw the Netherlands as an ally of theirs at the beginning of the Revolution, but the Netherlands officially declared themselves neutral in the war. What the Netherlands was more interested in than a U.S. victory was making money.
Yeah.
And they weren't too concerned with who they were making the money from, but by the end of the war, the United States and the Dutch Republic would have a common enemy. This is how the Dutch would support the war effort: trade. Before I go further, let me first provide some context. At the time of the American Revolution, though slowly declining in power by the 18th century, the Netherlands was a global leader in trade, controlling territories across the globe and a worldwide network of seafaring trade routes.
Yeah, when I think of, the giant behemoths of Europe in the 17 and 1800s, like the 1700s, I think of France and the UK. But I know prior to that, the Dutch and also the Spanish and the Portuguese were a really big deal, to put it lightly.
Historians and economists debate on what exactly drove this small nation of only about 16,000 square miles or 42,000 square kilometers to become such a power. But historically, the Netherlands have accepted a high number of immigrants, which often brought with them skills and capital that could be reinvested. The country's inhabitants have also historically had a hard work ethic that emphasizes efficiency, which many historians say is rooted in its Calvinist past. But its rise to becoming a great seafaring nation is also rooted in the Netherlands' physical geography. This is a coastal country, lies extremely low in elevation, and is essentially one giant river delta, which has made it prone to flooding. I actually made a whole video on how the Dutch have adapted to its geography. If you want to check that out, I've left a link in the comments below. Water and the terrain shaped by it is why the country rides bikes, grows
This isn't Disneyland. I'm sorry.
tulips.
It's a story I've told many times, and when I was in the Netherlands,
Water
I was an idiot.
and the terrain shaped by it is why the country rides bikes, grows tulips, and has hundreds of windmills. But water didn't just shape culture within its mainland borders. The physical geography, combined with the aforementioned cultural characteristics of the Netherlands, turned the Dutch into expert and efficient shipbuilders, and motivated its population to seek trade opportunities across the globe. And one of those places was the 13 colonies. Tensions began rising in the American colonies following the French and Indian War in 1763. The British launched a series of acts that raised taxes on the colonists in order to pay for the war, because the British felt that the colonists caused the war, so they should provide payment for the protection.
Wasn't it, I'm not sure if it's a solidified fact that George Washington started the French and Indian War, but I think there is a pretty not insubstantial claim that he might have when he fired on French troops, or someone with him killed a French soldier when they were meeting in the frontier or the interior. I wish I was more knowledgeable.
Protection that Great Britain had provided. The colonists weren't happy about it. Protests erupted, and in 1770, British soldiers opened fire on a mob of angry colonists, killing at least 5 men and wounding several more, in what is known as the Boston Massacre. Then in December of 17...
I remember, I think it was actually a college course I took where even my professor said, the Boston Massacre, as if it was sort of a propaganda thing to call it a massacre when it was really just 5 people died in a sort of brawl, maybe like the Boston Brawl, but you have to give it that oomph and say massacre. And I thought that was interesting.
And several more, in what is known as the Boston Massacre. Then in December of 1773, a band of Bostonians, dressed as Mohawk Indians, in protest on the taxation, boarded British ships and dumped 342 chests of tea into Boston Harbor. The event is known as the Boston Tea Party. The British Parliament...
I'm sure the fish were very caffeinated.
Parliament responded with what the colonists refer to as the Intolerable Acts. This brought Massachusetts
Sugar Act,
under
Stamp
full
Act,
control of the
stuff like
British
that.
government, and allowed British loyalists in the colony to be tried in Great Britain. George Washington...
Sorry, I'm speaking over it. There he is, Big George.
Colonists refer to as the Intolerable Acts. This brought Massachusetts under full control of the British government, and allowed British loyalists in the colony to be tried in Great Britain. George Washington called this the Murder Act, because he said it allowed British officials to harass colonists and then flee to Great Britain to escape justice. The act also allowed British soldiers to be housed wherever necessary, including private homes.
I keep hearing that, I've heard some people in comments about the American Revolution in videos I've reacted to say it was like it was really the British against the British in a sort of civil war rather than some sort of revolution starting a country. And I get that, but also you heard it right there in
be tried in Great Britain. George Washington...
if this is Great Britain...
the Murder Act, because he said it allowed British officials to harass...
British officials. So calling them British officials means you're not British. But I've heard other people say, well, they were British. Maybe they're just referring to the people from the actual British Isles. It's a bit confusing.
Colonists, and then flee to Great Britain to escape justice. The act also allowed British soldiers to be housed wherever necessary, including...
That's where the Third Amendment comes from. Third Amendment, I believe, is nor like Australia, no housing of troops in houses in peacetime is like the Third Amendment. And so obviously they were kind of pissed. It's like, no way that's happening again. Okay, First Amendment, free speech. Second Amendment, guns. Third Amendment, no more housing soldiers in houses, okay? That is not happening. And I find that interesting that it was the Third Amendment, It wasn't like the 8th or 9th. It was the 3rd. So clearly that was a big deal.
Private homes. Though some historians say the act only meant unoccupied buildings. Great Britain had attempted to isolate extremists in Massachusetts with these acts, but it backfired, and other colonies pledged to support Massachusetts if there was an attack by the British. The colonists prepared for war. The British, for obvious reasons, refused to sell arms and ammunition to the American colonists, and they banned other countries from doing so as well. In 1774, Britain declared the export of war materials to the colonies to be illegal, and therefore...
There's a lot of debate about what the Second Amendment means, because the Second Amendment over here is the right to bear arms. And I've heard some people say it's talking about the right for militias to have arms, but not necessarily all the people. And others say, no, it's everyone can bear arms. It does say in a well-regulated militia. But the thing that kind of makes me believe that the Second Amendment was about protecting, making sure that, you know, I really don't know this, but I'm more wondering that because of, you know, the experience the American revolutionaries had in, like, not allowing guns, well, that's crucial to stand up against some tyranny. What can you do if you don't have guns? And I wonder if it's tied to that. I'm no expert here, obviously.
For Sub 74, Britain declared the export of war materials to the colonies to be illegal, and therefore subject to search and seizure. And this is where the Dutch enter the picture, because the Dutch didn't care.
They were like, what up?
Dutch
what?
merchants continue to trade wherever and whenever possible. The British Lieutenant Governor of New York warned London in November of 1774 that contraband between this place and Holland prevails to an enormous degree. Actions must be taken against the smugglers, but it would not be easy. The vessels from Holland or St. Eustatia do not come into this port, but in the numerous bays and creeks that our coasts and rivers furnish, on which the contraband is sent up through small boats. The British were furious that the Dutch continued to ignore the ban. They then made a strong request to the Netherlands to stop all war materials from being shipped to the American colony.
This is kind of a pickle that you get into with this, you know. If you have a part of your country and your land that is rebelling against you, then of course anyone who has that is not going to want your trade partners to give any aid to them, right? However, if you are the person trading, then it kind of sounds like you're being dictated. First of all, it's about your money and your bottom line, and no one wants to be told what to do with that. But it feels like you are being told who you can and can't trade for. And so this is a classic kind of, I see both sides of the argument, and I can see people getting upset on both sides. It's like, well, you would not want other people to trade with people rebelling against you in your own territory. However, if you are the one trading, you don't want to be told who you can't trade with. And so even if you don't have some beef with that power, it's still going to cause some obvious tensions.
Penalties and request to the Netherlands to stop all war materials from being shipped to the American colonies. Penalties included confiscation of materials, large fines, and the confiscation of ships if not paid. Conscious of not being able to go head-to-head with the British Navy, the British had 100 warships compared to the Netherlands' 11. The government of the Netherlands officially decided to comply. But the Dutch merchant class wasn't happy with their government's decision, and they just continued to ignore the British request. So the British then responded with more search and seizures around St. Eustatius, the hub for this arms and ammunition trade. Once the war had officially begun with the battles of Lexington and Concord in April of 1775, the Dutch ammunition trade to the Americans got so bad that King George III in January 1776 ordered more warships on duty around the Caribbean. He stated, "Every intelligence confirms that principally St. Eustatius, but also all the other islands, are to furnish the Americans with gunpowder this winter." But many of the Dutch traders continued to find ways to evade the British. More obstacles arose with the defeat of the Americans at Long Island, which left America completely without the ports of New York and later Philadelphia. Though the two largest ports were occupied by the British, the Dutch were again not a group to give up on this lucrative trade, and they continued smuggling through smaller ports and estuaries. In 1776, the Dutch Republic made a half-hearted effort to comply with the continued requests from the British. They replaced St. Eustatius governor with a new man, named Johannes de Graaf, after the British complained that his predecessor was allowing merchants to continue to ship war materials to the Americans. But on the 16th of November, 1776, the American Navy ship USS Andrew Doria, with the American Declaration of Independence on board, arrived in St. Eustatius. Its captain fired a salute to the Dutch flag on Fort Orange, and the governor, Johannes de Graaf, decided to answer the salute with 11 gunshots. And so the United States of America were for the first time recognized as a nation by another. So now...
Okay, I definitely Love to touch.
Not only were the Dutch preventing the Americans from running out of ammunition, allowing the revolution to continue, they had now recognized the British colony as a sovereign nation. On top of this, the Netherlands was actually supposed to have provided 6,000 troops to the British for the war, as was the terms of a past treaty. In 1778, when France was persuaded to join in the fight against the British, the Dutch traded with them as well. But with the French, they traded mostly naval stores. The French needed supplies for their naval construction, but were unable to obtain them themselves due to the blockade of the Royal Navy. So they turned to the Dutch, who were privileged by a concession obtained after their victory in the Second Anglo-Dutch War, known as the principle of free ship, free goods, which was enshrined in the Anglo-Dutch Commercial Treaty of 1668. According to the treaty, naval stores were not considered contraband, as long as the Dutch remained neutral, which the Dutch claimed they were. But of course, the British just declared naval stores illegal and started arresting Dutch ships. And as always, Dutch merchants continued to evade the British.
I feel like this is a situation where like respect is going to play a lot. Because of what I said before, you know, you don't want people trading with a rebelling property of yours, colony of yours. But if you're the trader, you don't want to be told what to do as a sort of honorable, you know, thing. And I'm not saying it'll 100% work, but I think that going head in and just arresting a ship or whatever that might be disobeying what you believe is disobeying what you asked for is only going to light, you know, fan the flames, so to say. And I'm not saying that just asking politely will solve things, but I think it'll count for a lot. No expert here. Disagree with me.
The Dutch-British
Please, if you think I'm
relationship
wrong.
became more hostile on the 31st of December 1779, when the two countries had a brief naval engagement. The British wished to inspect Dutch ships for what they considered contraband destined for France. The Dutch initially refused and threatened the British with force, before finally backing down. The event caused the Dutch to pursue joining the League of Armed Neutrality, which was an alliance of European naval powers which was intended to protect neutral shipping against the Royal Navy's wartime policy of unlimited searches. The British government saw this move as a threat, and it could potentially embroil Great Britain in a war with its other members, Russia, Sweden, and Denmark-Norway. They had finally had enough. Great Britain officially declared war on the Dutch Republic, and they began attacking their former allies' colonial economic interests, including St. Eustatius, in what was known as the Fourth Anglo-Dutch War. One head-to-head naval battle did take place, the Battle of Dogger Bank. Both sides took hundreds of casualties. Tactically, the battle was a draw, but it was a strategic victory for the British. The Dutch did not have the naval strength to continue going head-to-head with the British. This allowed the British to continue their oppression against the Dutch merchants. Though the Dutch colonial empire had already been slowly declining, this settled it, and cemented Great Britain as the
That's got to be
leading...
so frustrating. Like going head to head with a great naval power and kind of ending in a draw, but just knowing that they have the numbers to just bring more ships and you don't, and so you have to sort of concede.
commercial power. Though this settled it, and cemented Great Britain as the new leading commercial power. Though the Netherlands' economic self-interests were a large motivator for the support of the American Revolution, Dutch citizens, probably more so than the Dutch government, became more sympathetic to the American cause as the war progressed. Both countries were being bullied by the same global power, and some sympathy may have come from the Netherlands having fought for their own independence in the 16th and 17th centuries. Whatever the motivation was, the United States will always be grateful for their support. Historian Barbara Tuchman claims that it's possible that the American Revolution would not have survived without the Dutch ignoring the ban on war materials and successfully evading the British. On February 20...
I would assume it's not just the material support that the Dutch would have, but also just you make the British second guess, you know, rather than just if everyone was standing in line and obeying any British demands. It has to force them to think about, have another thing to think about, which will, of course, have an effect.
27th, 1939, President Franklin D. Roosevelt presented a plaque to St. Eustatius. Mounted on the flagpole inside Fort Orange, it reads, "In commemoration of the salute to the flag of the United States, fired in this fort on 16 November 1776, by order of Johannes de Graaf, Governor of St. Eustatius, in reply to a national gun salute fired by the U.S. brig of war Andrew Doria. Here, the sovereignty of the United States was first formally acknowledged to a national vessel by a foreign official. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and subscribe for more geography videos. Thank you for watching.
Fantastic video. And that really is awesome and should... Maybe I was just a bad student, which I was, and maybe that was mentioned once or twice in history classes growing up, but I don't remember it, and it should probably be a little more emphasized. Just the first country to salute you and recognize you as your own nation is enormous. So, very cool. Love you guys. Hope you're all doing well. Would appreciate any comments down below. Thank you, the Netherlands. And hopefully I'll see you guys next time. We'll keep on learning. Bye, guys.